Great, it's 4:30 and we're going to call this meeting to order. We'll start with acknowledging that the District of Tofino operates within the territory of the Tla-o-qui-aht First Nation. We will also put out a notice to attendees that the meeting is being video recorded and recorded from the District of Tofino's YouTube channel. Also notice to virtual attendees to sign up for public comment and question period using the Q&A function in Zoom. To register, participants are required to enter their full name, residential address, and the agenda item they wish to speak to. The unanimous consent, if there are no objections, I move that pursuant to section 15 of the District of Tofino Meeting Procedure Bylaw number 1229/2016 as amended, the April 29th, 2024 Committee of the Whole meeting be held electronically via Zoom and live broadcasted on the District of Tofino's YouTube channel, and that the facility provided for the public to watch and hear the meeting be located at Municipal Hall, 80 Campbell Street in Tofino, British Columbia. Also, through unanimous consent, if there are no objections, I move that the April 29th, 2024 Committee of the Whole agenda be adopted. Through unanimous consent, if there are no objections, I move that the minutes of the Committee of the Whole meeting held February 26, 2024 be adopted. And we will now open to public comment on agenda items. Mr. McCall, do we have anybody?
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. I'll now do an open call for public comment. You'll need to state your name, your address, and the agenda item. You can raise your hand on Zoom or via the gallery. I will now call going once, going twice, going 3 times. There's no public comment at this moment.
Great, wonderful. We will move on. We have a delegation coming from the Clayoquot Biosphere Trust, Janessa Dornstauder, joining us via Zoom.
Yes, I will promote Janessa now. Hello, Janessa, can you hear us?
Hey, yeah, I can. I'm just, oh, you've stopped my video.
Okay. Are you able to show your video now?
You bet. Hey, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Yeah, I'm Janessa Dornstauder. I'm a program coordinator with the Clayoquot Biosphere Trust. CBT is the local community foundation here on the West Coast, and we're also the organization that oversees the UNESCO Biosphere designation for Clayoquot Sound. So we serve the communities and ecosystems that lie within the territories of the Heshkuyat, Clayoquot, Q&amp, and Tla-o-qui-aht nations. And the work that I get to do convenes people and nations and organizations that are working in the environmental and sustainable development fields, and it aims to support collaboration amongst them. So one of the greatest tools that we have as a community for tackling many of our big environmental challenges is collective impact. And the West Coast of Vancouver Island is unique in that there's just such a huge amount of passionate people and organizations and nations and other governments doing important work to plan infrastructure responsibly, to restore and steward and conserve these lands and waters. And while this is such a great thing, it does create the challenge of staying informed and up to date about the sheer amount of work being carried out. So as planners and decision makers yourselves, you know how important it is to have relevant and up-to-date information to inform yourselves. My work is to convene and coordinate in a way that supports collaboration. And we started hosting a regional gathering twice per year, starting last fall, to bring together and support groups involved in environmental research, sustainable development, restoration, stewardship. Last fall, the gathering brought together about 75 people representing First Nations and environmental organizations, businesses, local government, and provincial and federal governments as well. So it's a super productive day. We were excited to be continuing hosting this gathering twice per year, and the next one is coming up on May 7th. So it's a full day gathering meeting, and it centers around a roundtable for groups to share about the current work and priorities, with a special focus on listening to the priorities outlined by First Nations. It's a really great time for folks to identify opportunities for collaboration and ensure that all of our efforts are well-resourced and not being duplicated. So last fall, we had a really great feedback from a District of Tofino staff member who shared that they found the forum extremely helpful to identify who to connect with, to learn more, and to collaborate with on a handful of projects that they'd been facing challenges on. And there's been, a lot of news in the past 6 months around ways First Nations in this region are partnering with provincial and federal governments around land planning and sustainable development. And that just creates a ton of opportunity for ways that local government and NGOs can be a part of this work, especially here in this region. So I invite all of you to attend the next region scheduled for May 7th. And I certainly encourage you to send relevant staff to participate. We'll be hosted in Clayoquot territory at Tinwis, and there's an opportunity to tune in online as well. So we're also currently building the agenda. After the roundtable updates, there'll be time to break into groups and discuss some topics that we've been looking for some collective input on. And so this is an invitation to you if there's any topics that come to mind in the coming weeks. I encourage you to please connect with me, and I'll follow up with admin to get the invitation out if you haven't received it already. So please reach out if you have any questions, and thanks so much.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from council? I know we did receive your email invite. Greatly appreciate that, and thank you for taking your time to speak with us this afternoon.
Thank you.
We have no correspondence today, so we'll move into presentations and reports, and we are going to start with our Tofino Poet Laureate. We've got a few words prepared to lead in. As this term's Poet Laureate appointment comes to an end, on behalf of the District of Tofino, Mayor and Council, I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to Heather Hendry's service to the community. Heather's focus as Poet Laureate was supporting and uplifting youth on the West Coast. Her term included several highlights, such as her leadership in organizing an exhibition titled Truth, Honor, and the Way Forward regarding the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. She submitted a poetry book titled Love from My Point of View, published her own poetry book titled Handmade Binoculars, and hosted other music and poetry inspired events throughout the community. Heather, would you like to say a few words before passing the torch? Sure. Come on up to the podium. Please join us.
I think we're set at all. Yeah, I just want to say thank you to the District of Tofino, the Poet Laureate Working Group, for making the last 2 years very supportive, and also it went by in literally a blink of an eye. And I'm very thankful to be celebrating poetry with both high school students and then my past elementary school students. And I see, even though the term is complete, I still see myself as being a mentor through poetry with the next generation. And I just wanted to close with reading a poem that was one of my first poems that I wrote through the eyes of a kindergarten student in a visit. So kind of like comes full circle. So it's called Handmade Binoculars. Curling his small hands into circles, he places them in front of his brown eyes, thumbs touching. Knees rest on the low windowsill, inches from a dead bee, laid to rest in cobwebs. Life outside is busy today. He scans from side to side. The binoculars pass up to me, crouched, I look through. A crow and seagull share the telephone wire in conversation about the weather. A stray dog circles the heels of a cow, taunting her. A path of colors connect land to sky, the same arc he drew that morning above a square and triangle, home to mom, dad, and baby brother. But it's the rainbow he wanted me to see as his hands drop away from my eyes. And yeah, and I'm thrilled to welcome the new Poet Laureate. I won't say so much, but I'm supposed to. And yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Before, maybe I just wanted to thank Heather. If you can influence a 17-year-old male in high school, so your work in supporting youth, yeah, my 17-year-old male son who was influenced by Heather. So if you can do that, you've done your job well. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Who's your son?
Ethan. Yeah.
Nice.
Really appreciate it. And thank you, Heather. Next, I'd like to formally welcome Tofino's new 2024 to 2026 Poet Laureate. Amongst several excellent applications, this poet stood out in her loyalty to this community and her artistic accomplishments. We are honored to have such a vibrant and prolific poetry culture here in Tofino, and this applicant is no exception. Please join me in welcoming Tofino's new 2024 to 2026 Poet Laureate, Janessa.
Mayor and council, district staff, guests. Thank you for the honor to stand before you as the fourth Poet Laureate of Tofino. I am honored. And I would like to thank Heather Hendry for the work she has done as Tofino's third Poet Laureate. I have had the great pleasure of attending several of her poetry events in the beautiful garden at Monk's Point. She has encouraged the art and craft of poetry in the community and among the lucky students she has taught. And she has worked for reconciliation with a powerful exhibit of t-shirts and poetry created by students at Clayoquot Secondary School, incorporating both in a book titled Truth, Honor, and the Way Forward. Thank you, Heather, for your gift to our community of your poetry and your vision. The three poets laureate who have come before me, Joanna Streetley, Christine Lowther, and Heather Hendry, have all offered our community their unique voices and visions, and I hope to do this too. In a time of increasing divisiveness in society, and when political agendas seem to permeate everything, I would like instead to turn towards celebration and community. I hope to bring the artistic energy of this community in all its diversity and commonality into conversation, first among artists of many disciplines, and then by offering the fruits of our imaginations and vision to the community at large. There is challenge in putting our visions out there in the world, and I would like to offer Mayor and Council a poem that speaks to this. The poem is titled Beetlejuice and the Poet, and Beetlejuice being the unfortunate English pronunciation of the red star which forms the right shoulder of the constellation Orion. Beetlejuice and the Poet. Words emerge slowly from a growing darkness, not like Venus at evening, dim at first, then brightening, but like myriad stars in the night sky playing hide and seek in a fickle mist. Beetlejuice is dimming. Some say the red shoulder of Orion will go supernova, gathering itself in until it bursts from its very heart, in its last moments flaring gloriously, flinging a tsunami outward through the Milky Way. We can hope to be such a star. We can hope to be such a wave after we have darkened, our words swirling among still burning suns, altering orbits, altering destinies. This poem is not just about a poet's challenge and aspirations, but about the challenges we all have to find the right words, the right actions, and about our aspirations to somehow make a difference in the world. Sometimes that work is difficult, the situation bleak, and words emerge slowly from a growing darkness. Sometimes finding the right word, the right action is tricky, playing hide and seek in a fickle mist. But sometimes we have a flash of understanding of what we are trying to say, what we need to do, and we flare gloriously, flinging a tsunami outward through the Milky Way. It matters that we reach for the right words, the right action, and that aspiration to get it right. We can hope to be such a star. We can hope to be such a wave after we have darkened. I offer this poem to you today to say our words and actions make a difference in this world, even after we have moved on, are no longer on district council or a citizen of Tofino or a poet laureate. Most of us want to leave this world a better place for our having been here. Our words swirling among still burning suns, altering orbits, altering destinies.
Janice, we look forward to all of the words that are yet to follow. Our next presentation is from Sergeant Owen Smith, Detachment Commander for Tofino House at RCMP.
Thank you. And sorry to have to go from the beauty and poetry to pleasing, but
The balance.
yeah, try and be a bit more eloquent with my words. So I don't have a specific presentation. I know in talking with Mayor Law, I sent out some statistics, which I think everybody probably got a copy of. So maybe we can go over those quickly. I can just give you a brief overview of what I saw, and then you can ask me any questions that you might have, and then maybe we can touch on summer policing and going from there. So the statistics, which are up on the screen right now, are unremarkable, which is probably a good thing. There's no type of crime that really stands out. In talking with the crime analyst too, she didn't have any concerns, nothing that she flagged on her end. That we really need to focus on other than what we already have initiatives for, which is impaired driving, impaired boating, things like that, the summer tourist and traffic season. So I don't know if anybody had any questions they wanted to ask me about there. Some of the terms might not be familiar as they're all from Stats Canada.
I don't know what founded means.
So founded, when we get a report, basically we need to determine, did this actually happen? So that's the simplest way to define what founded is. And they'll typically only use those for crimes. So things that are getting reported back to Stats Canada. So you'll see there's the one category there that's founded not reportable. So those are files that we deal with that don't get reported back to Stats Canada. So mental health files, things like that. The only other thing is you can see there's a decrease in files, but I think everybody here knows this better than I do. I've only been here for 8 months, but I guess there's quite the uptick during COVID, quite the increase in people coming here and offenses being committed. So that's good to see it's returning to what I was told is the norm.
Some questions?
Yeah, just, thank you through the chair. Yeah, and thank you. We appreciate the quick update. But you did mention the two areas of focus: impaired driving, impaired boating, and particular concern. And those, we had a presentation many years ago around some of the issues around the health challenges that are imposed in alcohol being specific in those areas. And it looks like those two focus areas are specific in those areas. In terms of your work around the boating aspect of, because I work on the water, I did notice just recently the detachment had it. So the Marine unit coming out of Port Alberni, is there specific taskings for them specifically around boating impairment or just in general?
Both. Is sort of a general question there. They work out in Nanaimo, so that's where our Marine section is based out of. Then obviously they travel outward, depending on where they're needed. They have their typical routines where they'll do different parts of the coast all the way up through Prince Rupert. So we put in a request for more patrols here, whether that means I'm bringing a boat, or sort of bring the north or south end of the island, or they'll come here and use the boat that we have here in Tofino, which is what you saw a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, definitely impaired boating's a priority. That's come up with the Tla-o-qui-aht band as a concern. So we asked them to focus on that, but they were also doing check stops down where at the 4th Street dock where people are unloading and loading up their boats. stopping commercial vessels, things like that. So a variety of enforcement initiatives, but we just don't have the time here with our resources. Lots of days I'm working by myself. We have one night shift member. Unfortunately, we have a policy that you have to have 2 people on the boat just for safety. So that precludes us from being able to do that as much as we'd like. So that's why we're looking at overtime and other units to come in and assist.
And the detachment in through the chair, the detachment up in a house, they still have their vessel.
Yeah, so we have a boat in each location, but they're bound by the same, constraints that we are.
Right on, thanks.
Yeah.
Do we have any more questions there, Council?
You've got some more presentation, right?
Yeah, I mean, since we're talking about the impaired voting initiative, also bring up the impaired driving initiatives that we're doing. So you probably saw those going through last summer, and they ended in October, unfortunately, just due to funding and some other issues. But we've got those back on track, at least starting, I think it was last weekend they were out here. So you might have seen them out on the road, and we're hoping that'll be consistent going forward. 12 months of the year, not just seasonally, but yeah. And I don't know if did those stats get out from their roadblock a couple weeks ago?
This package through the chair, anything?
It wouldn't have been on these stats, no. I just spoke to sorry, I didn't actually bring those with me, but
Send them to me, actually.
yeah, I think I sent them to your email. So it was the number of impaired drivers they removed, contraband, tobacco, some drugs that were seized, things like that. So maybe Mayor Law can share those later, but
Oh, yeah, well, you can, yeah, absolutely. Actually, I have it right here.
perfect.
And I didn't realize this was just to me, to travel parks as well. But I guess I should share this on, but it looks like it was very productive. 21 pleasure craft inspected, 4 commercial vessels, check stops, and there was traffic, some violation tickets, impaired drivers removed.
Yep.
And I just have to say, I think that's so important, that work to get those impaired drivers off the road and to get a culture, in Tofino and in the region on the coast here of, we just don't put up with impaired drivers. It's such a high risk to our residents and children.
Mhm.
So thanks for that. I just really do appreciate that.
Appreciate it. And I know I said the stats are unremarkable, but we only get, I'm sure, a minute portion of the crimes that are actually being actually occurring, right? Impaired driving, definitely, right? It's not one that people witness a lot, so we need that enforcement and that visibility of people being able to actually making the stops rather than being reported to us. So that's where this unit is great to have them come out. And yeah, so you should see them a little bit more, hopefully, going forward.
Wonderful. Did you have anything else for your presentation? Or?
The only other thing I was just going to give a quick update on body worn cameras, something that the municipality probably wants to know about, as well as people in the community. We'll start wearing those, it sounds like, in the fall. Tofino is going to be one of the first places that's rolled out. So we might have some questions that come up about disclosure and privacy. If that's the case, let me know. I can come back and try and answer them as best I can, or take those questions elsewhere. But yeah, I think that's a good addition. What's happening?
We agree with that, Councillor Sue?
Yeah, just if that's the end of the, I just had 2 questions around one around the reservist program this year and the support for that. Obviously, council is very supportive of that, and I was just wondering if you had any update on that.
Yeah, I might defer to April a little bit more for the timeline here. It's still working. I think we have to. This is new to me as well. The seasonal arrangements. So I think we're waiting on the province and the District of Tofino to sign off on that. The fellow that you've seen the last 3 years, he is not available. So the sooner we can get that agreement in place, the better, because we'll have to look for somebody who's willing to come and spend their summer out in Tofino. Which doesn't sound terrible, but still got to find somebody to do it. So yeah, no update on that yet, but I think it should happen. It sounds like it's making its way through signatures, etc.
Yeah, and just one follow-up. I wonder is an opportunity for as our community policing service to have a conversation with the community council and the community in general about those community policing priorities and what does the community see as those priorities. You mentioned 2 big ones, I think, in terms of those initiatives around impaired driving, impaired voting. I'm just wondering if there might be an opportunity for town hall formatted or in another committee of the whole type format to have a conversation around those community policing priorities.
Yeah, definitely. It's something that I know some of my coworkers done in other municipalities where we can bring in, people that specialize in impaired driving. We can set up a forum where community is welcome to come in and sit down at a specific table if they want to hear from a certain expert or just myself, with an overview of everything. And yeah, we could definitely set something like that up. So yeah, I just need to know sort of the idea of the topics that we want to discuss at the time and try and get the experts in that too.
And I think also maybe from a community perspective, just an understanding of where maybe the community feels those priority areas may be, not just maybe coming directly from a council, although often we are technically the voice. But it would be interesting because the perceived issues that may be out there and maybe some of the more I don't perceive of any. I've been around for a little while in terms of the big ticket items, but it would be nice to understand maybe from a community perspective where they see issues from a police and community policing perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's why it was nice also to get the statistics because we'd heard that later at night we were starting to get more disturbance calls, things like that. So just in adjusting our coverage hours, we wanted to have a look at these statistics. So we didn't see quite the spike, around the 2-3 M like we thought we might, but yeah, anyways, we keep tracking that and it's good feedback.
Wonderful. Well, if there's no more questions, we'll let you get on with your evening. Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Next up, we are looking at meeting procedures, bylaw amendments, report from corporate services. Not staying.
You're not staying for the exciting part.
Meeting procedures. Council, one moment. So I'm here this evening to present a discussion around the meeting procedure bylaw amendments, in particular around electronic attendance. A little bit of background here. So on March 12th, Councillor Steer brought forward a notice of motion that essentially asked for a provision around the increase of the number of allowable electronic meeting attendances. The discussion also touched on several other topics, including in-person quorum requirements, in-person chair requirements, and others. At the end of the discussion, Council directed staff to bring the discussion back to a future committee of the whole for a larger conversation. So the legislative authority around the meeting procedure bylaw, essentially at Section 124 of the Community Charter, requires that Council establish by bylaw the general procedures to be followed by Council in conducting business. From time to time, meeting procedure bylaw may require review to comply with changes to district practice, consider provisions from other jurisdictions, and improve the bylaw's readability and application. The community charter, however, does not provide limits to electronic participation, so that's really up to Council's discretion in this procedure bylaw. And staff did conduct a jurisdictional scan on other municipalities. Of 17 municipalities who responded, 15 had no limits on electronic participation. Several other corporate officers noted intentions around increased flexibility and accessibility for having no limits for residents to run for council. And municipalities also noted provisions requiring quorum to attend in person with exemptions on special and emergency meetings. So the current bylaw does allow council members to attend council meetings, committee of the whole meetings, and other district body duty meetings electronically. Having said that, currently there are limits to those attendances. So for regular council meetings, there are 3. For committee council meetings, there are 2. That includes committee of the whole. And for public hearings, council members are allowed to attend 2 electronically. Further, if council members do go beyond those electronic attendances, those will be marked as absences. So tonight for council, I have prepared 4 amendment discussions, and I'll go through them one by one in a little bit more detail before we dive into a discussion. But at a high level, the 4 are to increase electronic attendance permissions, for guidelines for granting those e-attendance permissions for council's discussion, the conversation of in-person quorum and in-person chair. So 3 options here for electronic attendance permissions. And maybe on the larger discussion, we can dive into these, but just for council's convenience, I've provided these 3 to 4 slides to discuss our options here. And then the final slide here, just in terms of communication, there are provisions in the community charter that mandate whenever a meeting procedure bylaw is changed, we must schedule 2 consecutive notices in the local paper. So there are provisions around making sure that the community is notified when this bylaw is changed. So with that, the recommendation is on the floor here, but I welcome any questions and discussion along the way. And if you would like, we can start with number 1.
Wonderful, thank you. Welcome. So jump in on this one.
I will. I thought maybe 2, an electronic attendance permission granted by approval of the mayor, but then maybe also maybe / and or council resolution could be in addition to the current electronic attendance. Because if the mayor is not available, so
Should we, what would be best for you in doing this? Should we just go around and kind of give our opinions on each of these points?
Sure.
Guidelines for this, or?
Perhaps I can introduce each number and then maybe we can go along. So for this particular provision, there's 3 options, but the 2 on the table are here. Accounts attendance, electronic attendance may be increased by either council resolution or by the mayor. So number 1 is for council resolution, and number 2 is through the mayor. And then the number 3 is to remain as is, so no increases permitted.
We'll just go around the table.
Yeah, I think this is a good starting place to have the conversation in terms of the actual permissions. I mean, the one other possibility, of course, would be to just increase the permissible numbers so that we wouldn't have to go through the process of asking a mayor and or council for that. Is something, those were the 2 ones that I thought, it'd be worth having a conversation with council around. I think as the kind of the foundational question. Otherwise, that does add a little more complexity by needing permission from council and or mayor specifically. I don't know if that's onerous or not, but just to increase the potential numbers or just to get rid of it altogether, which I think would be challenging because I've had discussions with many councillors and the mayor around the intent of having a set number so that people couldn't just for the next 4 years live in Guam or Hawaii or wherever and attend that way. So I recognize the having some constraints on numbers is appropriate. So I would be comfortable with increasing the number and or having the option of mayor / council in the event that mayor wasn't available to grant once those 3 were exceeded. So I'm comfortable either way. I think probably if I was to favor one, it would just to be increase the number and then if there was special provisions after that, well.
I have a question about number 1. Is that meant to be that council on a case-by-case basis would grant permission, or by resolution we would grant more permission overall?
Through the chair, good question. Honestly, totally up to council. I think the intent with this recommendation is on a case-by-case basis. If the upcoming electronic attendance breaches the allowable and it's foreseen and planned, then the member can obtain that increase. But yeah, I understand that there's limits to those scenarios.
I personally, I think that a combination of 1 and 2 would be fine. I think when possible, when the attendance permission, there's enough time to have council do a resolution. I think it makes sense, but sometimes there is not going to be time for a council to make a resolution, and in those cases, it could default to the mayor. That would be my proposition.
Would the mayor then be allowed to grant themselves that permission as a member of council? It's kind of, I mean, I don't think our current mayor is going to abuse it, but you never know. If we have another mayor, they could grant that permission to themselves every meeting. Maybe. So it's, and also in a different political environment where maybe a mayor didn't agree with a council member, maybe even on an agenda item, they might not grant permission in order to remove them from the meeting. So it could be used strategically as a political kind of thing. So it's, again, I don't see that situation happening currently, but it does in a contentious kind of council or over a contentious issue leave room for political manipulation of that power. So I'm not really great with number two. Like, I mean, in perfect world, I think it would work. I think it should be, any permission should be by bylaw. And I think the council permission is a little problematic because you don't know sometimes in time to have a council meeting to approve the permission for the next council meeting. So, anyways, that's my preferred option, would be that it'd be clear in a bylaw how many times you were allowed to participate electronically and not at the discretion of either council or the mayor. That's my thoughts.
Thank you. Fantastic.
Probably leaning towards two. Where I'm quite happy the way things are actually, but where I do have a concern about the way things are. I mean, I do believe that you're expected to attend meetings, and I like the fact that, you know, you're expected to only miss so many. What I don't like is if you do miss so many, I think losing, 2 weeks pay or whatever on the next page, I think that's just a bit ridiculous. So.
Yeah, I think for the issue that came up for me wasn't so much like, for example, it'll come up for me where I will exceed my 3, and then it's counted as that I want to attend. I can't attend by Zoom, but I wouldn't be able to attend the meeting. I would be considered absent, even though I'm more than willing to attend. I don't think there's a pecuniary issue, is there?
There used to be, because I remember council sick got docked.
Thank you, Chair. I can speak to that. So in addition to allowing electronic attendance, there is also an allowance for the number of missed meetings in council's meeting procedures bylaw. Staff wasn't ready to come today to contemplate that section of the bylaw. We could do that at a future committee of the whole if we like. Those number of absences and the reasons for those absences were contemplated by council of the day at length, and in consideration of the fact that compensation may be impacted if council members exceeded those number of missed meetings. So we tried to find a balance between what the legislative requirements are before removal from office and what council was comfortable with at that time in terms of the number of missed meetings. So if council would like to revisit that section, we're looking at that. We're looking at this section separate from that, but we could certainly bring it back at a later date.
So to carry on, I'll just say, I still like the idea that it should go to the mayor, but if the mayor did say no, I would say that then the member of council would have the right to ask that the rest of the council make a decision. If that was upset the person who was getting to it.
Myself, I guess I'm okay with the electronic attendance. Like, I don't I could see increasing the number above 3. Just because there could be many life circumstances. I know that this is coming up in particular for one counselor, but just thinking to all of the things that could happen in people's lives, whether like injury or illness or having to travel for family matters and still wanting to be involved in things. But on that, I could see increasing the number and then maybe, as Duncan said, go through the mayor first, and then if it was a no, go through council. That would be my opinion, but I would be okay with upping that number because I think 3 is kind of a low number for some of the life occurrences that could happen to people, as long as we have quorum if present. Anymore?
Through the chair. Just a comment, if we're going to discuss upping the number of allowable electronic meetings, there's a chance that people may still, for unforeseen circumstances, which is going to be on the next slide, I'm sure, need to go beyond that. And so I think whether or not we up the number of allowable electronic meetings, we're still going to have to, if we want, deal with this question. So just an idea that we could pick one of these or a compilation of whatever ones, and then when we go and look at the number of allowable attendance where you don't have to go see the council, we can answer that question at that time. So that would be my comment, to sort of get this one out of the way.
Yeah, I would be through the chair. Yeah, I would be supportive very much of increasing the number, and then if that number were to be exceeded, that either through resolution of council, or I think it would be appropriate even after a certain, if that number was increased, to be able to, for unforeseen circumstances after that, to go to the mayor directly to have that permission, just to simplify the process. But I hear Councillor Anderson's point that, you know, we're fortunate to have the councils that we have and have had, but I could perceive of it being weaponized in some way.
I was going to say we could go. The mayor can't give himself or herself a. So it would be the acting mayor if we were going to go that route, or the acting mayor for the mayor. With an option to dispute if the applicant gets a little complicated.
It sounds like it's getting complicated.
It's not hard. It's not hard. It shouldn't be hard. It's just a question.
One more question. Does this cover just regular council meetings, or is it committee over the whole and council, or?
Yeah, good questions through the chair. Yeah, so currently 3 attendances for regular council meetings, and then 2 for committee of the whole. So we can go back to the bylaw here, this one. The rest of the full come 2, and then 2 for public hearings.
Thank you, through the chair. What might be a good idea is to move on to point number 2 just for a moment, and we can come back to number 1. If I think we're just not sure, council may not be sure where to land with the number of allowable meetings, but adding some language and parameters around what the mayor or acting mayor may be able to approve in addition to those allowable virtual attendance or electronic attendance meetings might provide some comfort when it comes to the decision making of the mayor, acting mayor. And so maybe I'll pass it back to Keegan.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, excellent choice there, I think. So for number 2, and this just provides guidance for council when they're considering extending electronic permissions. So at the March 12th meeting, we discussed unforeseen, unavoidable, or for reasons related to accessibility. Or number 2, employment related travel, or remain as is, no guidelines. If the mayor or council should choose to increase those electronic attendance permissions.
I just add one
Yes,
thing. Thank you. What this will do is it allows for some some discretion, but also some privacy for the council member that's coming forward and requesting this. And I somewhat look at it in the same way as when a staff person may come forward and not be able to attend work that day. Adding some of this language provides, I think, a level of comfort to council, and then the discussion doesn't have to happen at the council table.
I like number one, makes sense to me, it gives good guidelines, and I think with that, if we went back to the first one, it would make it a little easier and better to understand. We change that discussion, so I don't think that's where I would.
Anyone else? Add anything on to this one?
I like 1 and 2, yeah.
For myself, I think 1 and 2 are important. And I feel strongly for number 2, just given that this is not a full-time position for any of us, and quite a few of us, and probably people for many generations, are going to have to work additional jobs while they do this role.
I have a little bit of an issue with number 2, because I feel like we did take this role to be here in person. I guess you'd still be there, so maybe I'm not, maybe. To myself.
It's over here for
Through the chair, I wonder if, employment related travel is covered under unavoidable. Really, because we're talking about Councillor Steers having to travel, it is unavoidable. That's clear. It's not the same as somebody who works out of town all the time. You know what I mean? And they know that going into their position that they're actually not going to be here. So it's kind of, I think number 1 does cover off the situation that we're talking about right now, and gives some protection for ensuring that people that do go for the job are here. But that would be, I think. But I'd look to Councillor Steer for a comment on that one.
No, I think, I go back to, partly, obviously, there was an incentive individually here, but, when looking at that bigger picture, in terms of accessibility to future potential councillors to be able to participate on council, I think having a certain amount of, I don't know if ambiguity would be the right word, but unavoidable could capture almost everything in there. So I'd be comfortable with just having that, the 1 sentence just for clarity. And employment related travel, I think I would agree, could be captured in unavoidable. To your point, potentially if somebody were to take on the position and they knew that they worked out of town all of the time, they may not want to be looking at a council position. So yeah, I'm comfortable with inclusive under unavoidable. I don't know if there's any way that could be misconstrued, but
Through the chair, perhaps I'll say this because the meeting's being recorded, and just for the record, while we have this discussion, is number 1 was meant to be more broad, and yes, it does include employment related travel. We are responding to the notice of motion, so number 2 was meant to be specific to responding to the notice of motion only.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I'm happy with 1. I'm happy with 3 as well. Yeah, I'm going to change things out a little more.
Well, I think the general support around the table is for number 1, understanding that it includes number 2.
Excellent. And no language change on number 1 there. Perhaps we'll move through the other 3 too. So this third, yes.
Before we move on, because the subject matter changes slightly, I just want to summarize what was discussed under number 1 and number 2. So council or staff has clarity in terms of moving forward. It sounds like council is comfortable with the mayor, acting mayor approving additional absences that exceed the allowable in the meeting procedures bylaw. And in addition to that, adding the language around what would be acceptable under number 2, if we just move forward one slide, which would be unforeseen, unavoidable, or for reasons related to accessibility. So I think that that's what staff are hearing.
That's good.
Yeah, and through the chair, maybe there was a discussion about upping that number as well. I may have missed it.
I did not include that in my summary, no. So if that's an outstanding desire for council, then staff would need some direction on that as well.
What's the general feeling for if we need to up the number and want to do thumbs up, thumbs down?
Should we, through the chair, should we go through the this first and then we can chat about about whether or not to up the actual number or deal with it?
Yeah. Thank you. We'll continue, Mr. McCall.
Okay, so we'll come back to item number 1 because yeah, I think staff need more direction there, but we can move on to number 3, which discusses in-person forum. So 2 options here: requires a quorum of council members to attend in person as opposed to electronically, or remain as is, no quorum if it's for electronic attendance.
Pretty heavy in favour of number 1 on this one. I think it's important public perception to see that councils working together in person. And I think you get better communication when we're talking face to face as opposed to through a screen.
I also feel strongly in support of number 1.
That's support number 1.
I'm seeing nods and thumbs up. I think we all agree that it's important to have us here and present. And if, there's members of the community that want to join us here and present, that we're accessible and available and much easier for communication.
I think the public would be pretty upset if they came to the meeting and the rest of it, we were all on screen.
Excellent. And just a note here for council on those emergency meetings or last minute meetings. Just to note that none of these regulations really apply to council meetings that are held virtually. So that's always a provision. Excellent. Okay. And then the 4th item, in-person chair. So 2 items here. Either the chair must attend in person, and if the chair cannot attend in person, the acting mayor will be appointed chair or a prescribed person. Or number 2, for me, as is, the chair may attend virtually and conduct those chair duties virtually.
Number 1 for me.
I think we're all going to agree on number 1 as well.
It's almost, I've attended as a mayor of a meeting that I'm supposed to chair, and I do not chair it. I think it would be virtually, it's pardon the pun, impossible to do it well. So I would say
Excellent. Okay. Then I'll revisit number 1 here. So looks like council has directed staff in terms of the guidelines and how to make this decision, but who should make the decision and how?
I think we were leaning towards number 2 being mayor/acting mayor. If we're talking about the numbers, the only reason I was saying I would be okay with numbers going up is just to make it less onerous to run it through. If we were talking about doing a council resolution, if it's just going through a mayor and acting mayor, it might not be so important. Sorry, I'm just jumping in with my first opinion since I have the floor. Yeah. Questions? I know Councillor Steer, you're feeling strongly about upping the number, but I wasn't hearing that from the others.
Yeah, and the only reason I would be upping the numbers was just to make it less bureaucratic.
Yeah.
That's the main reason.
to the chair, I just want to know if Councillor Anderson's concerns about an aberrant mayor it has been addressed with the number 2 guidelines. I just want to make sure.
I brought that mainly up just for argument's sake, so that it's sort of brought into the discussion. It is a kind of a remote possibility, but I thought I would bring that forward. They're addressed well through guidelines.
Would we need to have it in the bylaw to have some sort of process if somebody felt that they were errantly disqualified from attending a meeting? Would there be some sort of way they could go through, say, oh, I was told no, I can't attend. I would like to, I don't know, argue against that. Would that be necessary? Is that getting too like down in the weeds about this?
Not necessarily. I think this is that's a difficult question to answer. There are protections for council members outside of what we may see in the meeting procedures bylaw. So I might just set that question aside and get back to council at a later date.
I think the code of conduct comes into it too, in examples I brought forward.
I think if it got to that point, we would be in a lot worse. We'd probably be reviewing our code of conduct and a bunch of other things as well. So let's just aim high.
I've always felt if you're really strong about something, you're going to be at the meeting. And if for some reason you can't attend the meeting because of work, I would be saying, I'd be asking the mayor or staff to move that subject from the meeting to a meeting I can attend.
And again, this isn't for every electronic attendance. This is just when you've exceeded your permissible ones. So probably not a situation that's going to occur on a very regular basis. Are you satisfied with the guidelines on this?
Yes, guidelines for sure. For number of electronic attendances, currently we have 3. Did we want to have a discussion about increasing those, or is council happy with the 3, the 2?
Can you, through the chair, can you put the slide up that shows it's 3 regular council meetings, 2 committee of the whole, and 2 public hearings? What is the total? How many regular council meetings do we have a year? The 20
between 2020 and 24.
About 20 regular council meetings. Committee of the whole is about every 6 weeks. But there is a break in the summer. We should mention, I'll mention again that there is the ability for a council member to also be absent from meetings. When we were contemplating the parameters around this, I remember the discussion at the time. Some of the concerns were to make the number of regular council meetings too high. If it were to be 4, or if it were to be 5, that allows for a council member to be gone for quite an extended period of time if they were to happen in a row. But the choice is council's, but I just, we landed with 3, which may feel a little bit low. There was some concerns to choose a number that was too high, but we didn't necessarily know at the time if 3 was the correct number, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
And just for reference sake, again, you said you have 17 municipalities that responded back, 15 have no limits.
Have an opinion they'd like to put in on this? You want to keep it the same, talk about changing? Because I'm hearing 1 for changing. I could go either way.
I think whatever number you pick, it's not really suitable because it'll get changed the next time around. Somebody want to increase it. So.
If we're sad, sorry, Mila.
I think with, honestly, I think if we keep it like this, it's a pretty clear message, but then we allow flexibility to keeps the purpose. I think that everybody has sort of mentioned at least a little bit intact, but it also allows flexibility that we want indeed. So I'm happy to keep it, but I think we could revisit it. Maybe start off and then revisit it, and if things change, go back and say, hey, look, over time, we've realized that we want to expand it. And that's, I think, reasonable. I do hear Councillor Steer wanting to just change it higher.
I'm fine, like, at the will of council, I'm hearing that they're comfortable with the status quo in terms of the numbers. I'm comfortable with that. And yeah, I think, like you said, the flexibility that we're incorporating into this conversation, I mean, it would be, I hate to make it all about just myself, but unfortunately, that's where we are. Because it would just, I'm fortunate enough that I have the ability, my work schedule is set for this year. So I can make the phone call or, tell council that I'll be able to tell them right now how many that will be. So for me personally, it's not going to be an issue. I just, the only reason I was bringing it up was in terms of just less bureaucracy in terms of having to go through a process over time. But yeah, like I said, we can revisit it if that becomes two owners, which I'm not anticipating it would.
I'm wondering if the feedback where there is no limit, if that was in those bylaws, those other municipalities have, if that was a pandemic consideration when they enacted the bylaw. And I think our bylaw was, how do we deal with them? I think we dealt with this after the pandemic. So we kind of were changing, and I'm guessing the other ones may be still in place during pandemic. The one thing that the unlimited electronic attendance might be of some assistance to a disabled person that couldn't attend council meetings but was elected. That's an instance where you wouldn't want to have to give permission over and over again. So in that, I don't know if those bylaws took that kind of situation, but the enabling kind of there's for certain, I guess, situations, it could be really enabling to have an unlimited attendance, because there may be people that wouldn't want to be elected but feel they can attend meetings. So that's a very specific case, but might be a consideration.
Yeah.
Just a comment to Councillor Anderson through the chair is that if that were the case, I think, we're getting a little bit into the weeds, but I would like, if we're going to do unlimited or talk about it in the future or consider that unlimited electronic for accessibility, then I would have to see that be very clear. That's what it was for. Otherwise, all of this discussion just breaks down and we lose our the whole reason we're here to discuss this in the first place. So that's what I would say with the very specific accessibility, and maybe that comes out of the accessibility committee. Maybe that's something that comes later on.
I think we can safely say that for today, we keep the numbers where they are, and if we find that the process is bogging things down, then we can revisit the numbers at a later date, but we can keep that as is for the time being.
Excellent. Okay. And then finally, just so that I'm clear, council chooses that attendance permission may be granted by approval of the mayor, correct?
The mayor or the acting mayor, if the mayor is unavailable or looking to excuse themselves.
Okay. Excellent. I believe I'm set.
We do have a motion. If we are.
I've been typing away to amend what's included in council's packages, and I think it summarizes the discussion. Would council like me to read it, Chair? It's okay. So that staff be authorized to prepare amendments to District of Tofino meeting procedures bylaw number 12 2016 that addresses the following. Allow the mayor or acting mayor to approve electronic attendance of a council member beyond the allowable number based on unforeseen, unavoidable, or for reasons related to accessibility. The chair of the meeting must attend in person and requires a quorum of council members to attend in person.
I'll make that motion.
Wonderful. We have a seconder?
I'll second it.
We'll give it to Councillor Sloan. And all in favor? None opposed, motion is carried.
Council.
Yeah. And then we will move on to our question period, if anybody is stuck with us throughout that.
You, Councillor Thomas. Just check here. I'll now make an open call for question period. If there are any members online, which there are not, so no need
Alright.
to go.
Wonderful, would one of the councillors like to move us into closed session? No jumpers, okay, I will move from the chair. Now the meeting be closed to the public pursuant to sections 91A, C, E, K, and 92B of the Community Charter to discuss matters relating to 91A, personal information about an identifiable individual who holds or is being considered for position as an officer, employee, or agent of the municipality or another position appointed by the municipality. 91C, labor relations or other employee relations. 91E, the acquisition, disposition, or expropriation of land or improvements. If the council considers that disclosure could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality. 91K, negotiations and related discussions respecting the proposed commitment of municipal service that are at the preliminary stages, and that in the view of the council could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality. 92B, with considerations of information received and held in confidence relating to negotiations between the municipality and provincial government or the federal government or both, or between a provincial government or the federal government or both and a third party.
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. All in favor? None opposed, motion is carried.